I'm Matt Downing, and welcome to Diving Deep EDU.
Curious conversations with all types of peeps. Encouraging innovation, we are diving deep. Certainly education is what we like to speak. Fervent with dedication, now it is time to teach. Yeah.
Welcome to Diving Deep EDU. We're back at it with a focus for the next chunk of episodes. We're going to be talking about change, not just change in a general sense, but bringing about change within an educational setting, within a school. And we're going to be doing that through the lens of organizational behavior and different books about philosophies of change. And many of these books and these ideas about change aren't written directly towards the educational context. So we will spend some time thinking about how to apply these concepts about change to K-12 education. We're going to be reflecting, considering, seeking to apply. And if you have questions or comments, send an email. And we're going to be featuring some of those questions in future episodes. We have one today. My email is in the show notes. And while you're at it, go ahead, leave a review and share out this episode. Let's get rolling. So we're starting off the discussion of change by talking about foundational elements. And there's a bunch of them. We've talked about the why. We've talked about management is not leadership. Then went and talked about sacrifice is necessary when trying to bring about change. And then the previous episode was about protocols, having protocols to bring about change. And we're spending some time on these foundational elements because, as you know, you build a strong foundation and it will last. And that's what we're trying to do. So that's why we're taking a little bit extra time talking about these elements, thinking about it, considering, reflecting, so that the change that we want to bring about will become a reality. So before we go any further, let's get to a question. Remember, you can send all questions to the email listed in the show notes. Here we go. Let's get to the question. It says, all right, on episode 70, you talked about change protocols. What change protocol would you recommend? Great question. Love it. Thanks for sending it in. All right, so here where I'm at. I'm resisting hanging my hat on a specific change protocol for a few reasons. First, probably foremost, probably the most important is this. I don't want you obsessing over finding the perfect protocol to bring about change, right? That's where I'm at, okay? Resist the urge of reading all that's on the internet, of going to the library, checking out all these books, utilizing your library, your interlibrary loan, right? You got this big stack of books. Resist that urge. Resist the urge of going to your AI and doing the most extensive AI search on change protocols that's ever been done. Resist that. Because as you're spending this exorbitant amount of time going down rabbit holes and doing research, you're going to be wasting that time on the internet, wasting that time on the extensive amount of books, wasting that time having a 300 prompt interaction with ChatGPT. You're going to be wasting the time because there's no perfect protocol. I have to resist the urge of spending too much time on the research side as opposed to the doing side. If we're always researching, if we're always trying to make it perfect, we're never going to go out into the arena. We're never going to go out and initiate the change we want to bring about. Second, so I am going to recommend a change protocol in a moment, and I've talked about it a little bit on the previous episode. But it's less important to have a favorite change protocol than it is to get out there and do the work. And thirdly, we've been talking about this. Don't treat the change protocol like a prescription, like a recipe, so to speak. It's got to be a guide map. It's got to be a roadmap, something you follow, something that provides vision, something that provides clarity, right? I don't know about you, but I like to cook. I like to bake. And when I have a recipe that is too long, too many steps, right? It gets overly complicated. And it's easy to get lost in the steps, right? To get frustrated, to get confused. Oh, what? I thought I was supposed to do this. No, I said that. Like, it's confusing. And with that, the end product isn't what the creator of the recipe intended because it's overly confusing. And that's what we can do with change protocols. We can make them overly confusing. And we don't want confusion to overtake. We want clarity to be guiding us through the roadmap. Here is the change protocol I would recommend, and I've mentioned it in previous episodes, John Kotter's 8-step change protocol. It's wonderful. It's simple. It's to the point. And we're going to be talking about each part of this change protocol in future episodes. It's urgency, guiding coalition, vision, enlist, remove barriers, short-term wins, sustain, and anchor. Because leading change is effective when you have a roadmap. And yes, we want to have a roadmap. You want to have something to guide you that you can then use to guide others. But please do not get hung up on that. That's going to prevent you, right? You want it to be a roadmap, not an obstacle. A roadmap, not a barrier. A roadmap, not a speed bump. Something that's going to keep you from getting to where you need to go, to where your school needs you to go, to where your students need you to go, to where your teachers need you to go. The protocol is serving a purpose. The purpose is to provide a vision, to provide clarity, and to help us get done the work that we need to get done. All right, so that's all I got on that question. Thanks for sending that in. Please send questions, email in the show notes. All right, let's move on to the focus for today, and that's the need to limit bureaucracy when bringing about change. And I think that question does tie in to the episode, and we're going to see that as we go on throughout our episode today, because again, it's all about clarity. It's all about reducing confusion. It's all about helping us help others bring about the change that needs to get done. All right, so I was reflecting on the previous episode, and I was a little conflicted on the quotes that I used to sort of go against the protocols and then saying that they didn't make sense and those sorts of things. Let me be specific. So it was a quote from Musk and Hastings, and they were in opposition to change protocols. And then we sort of went back and forth with that and said they didn't make sense. Change protocols are effective. But I do align with Musk and Hastings in that they're trying to get rid of all the bureaucracy that's out there. And I do think they have many, many valid points. And I think that they are going to bring great insight in our topic today. So there's a lot of reasons why people get consumed in bureaucracy. I'm just going to bring up two. So we're going to look at two reasons why many people are consumed in bureaucracy. There's many reasons. We're just going to look at two reasons why many people are consumed in bureaucracy, especially within schools. All right, the first reason is leadership does not trust the people working in school. So if they don't trust the people working, then you're trying to control the people to do what you want them to do through bureaucracy. So you want them to do something, you don't trust them, you put all of these restrictions in place to try to get them to do what you want them to do, a change initiative. But here's what happens. It extinguishes it, right? Because as people are trying to get change done and they have to do this after this, after this, after this, after this, it stops them. It's, as we mentioned earlier, a barrier rather than an encouragement. Okay, so a person's trying to bring about a change within a school. They have an idea. Okay, fill out this form. Contact this person. Do this committee. Get this approved. Bam, 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 bam. By the time it's the sixth bureaucratic step, you've extinguished that from that person. They're no longer going to do the change initiative. Bureaucracy kills change. And that's why earlier I mentioned I was a little conflicted as I was reflecting on the previous episode, because in Hastings' book, No Rules Rules, a story about Netflix, yes, schools are not Netflix. I get that. But he goes to great lengths to reduce any friction that great people working for him will come against to do great things. And there's people take advantage. They go too far. Okay, we all get that. That's human nature. But the benefit far outweighs the negative consequences of that. Why do you think Netflix was able to revolutionize a complete industry? They wouldn't have done that if they had all these bureaucratic protocols in place. It would have killed change instead of opening the gates to change and allowing people to flourish. Okay, the second thing I want to bring up, why people are consumed in bureaucracy, the second reason is doing bureaucratic tasks can feel like you're accomplishing things. And the reason we gravitate to that is because change is hard. Let's admit it. Let's acknowledge that critical fact that change is hard. Doing bureaucratic steps is actually easy. Now, it kills change in one sense because it kills your momentum, it kills your freedom, it kills your creativity. But it's also easy. It's easy to fill out a form. It's easy to do a committee. It's easy to get this step and send this email and do this and do that and do this. And 2 years later, you're still doing the things. You're doing the things, but you're not doing change. Bureaucracy is easy, and the tasks make you feel like you're accomplishing great things to navigate that confusing bureaucratic maze. But bringing about change is much more difficult. Doing change is hard. So we can gravitate towards those checklists, but they can make you feel like you're doing change when it's actually not change. So again, bureaucracy can turn into sort of like a checklist. You're checking those off, moving through, I'm accomplishing things, but that doesn't necessarily result to change, even though if you might feel that dopamine hit from knocking things off the to-do list. All right, so another point I've been thinking about in relationship to this topic, to this episode, is it's easy to turn a change protocol that we've been talking about. We've been talking about that in this episode, in the previous episode. It's really easy to make a change protocol too complex, too confusing, too many steps. And as we do that, we're creating bureaucracy out of a change protocol. So we had good intentions. Oh, yeah. We want to get a guy met. We want to get a vision. We want to have something that's going to help us move forward. But next thing you know, oh, let me add a step here. Oh, let me add this form they got to fill out. Oh, let me add this here. It's to safeguard it. It's to make sure they're going where they need to go. Again, we're trying to control them. And what is that going to do? It's going to extinguish the change. But anyway, so, oh, let's add this. Let's add that. Let's add that. So what started out as a 6-step change protocol that was a clear roadmap, simple, clear, helpful, simply eventually turns into a 32-step complex change protocol that involves going to this department, that department, and could take multiple years to just accomplish the bureaucratic bureaucratic steps without even necessarily bringing about any change. Change protocols are helpful, but it's a slippery slope. So make sure as you're going through that, you keep it simple. Keep the main thing the main thing. The vision is the main thing, and it's a roadmap that helps us on our way to what? To not accomplishing tasks, to not checking things off a to-do list. It's to bring about effective change in schools. So if the change protocol is doing that, that's wonderful. If it's not, then simplify, pare back, simplify, until it does what it's intended. Another point I wanted to bring up, it's tempting to think that you can bring about change by sending and receiving emails. I'm tying this into bureaucracy because oftentimes email is a bureaucratic mess. So it can be tempting to sit at your desk. Or I'm writing up this email, sending that off. Okay, I'm going to send off this to that person. Okay, I'm sending this email. Okay, sending that email. At the end of the day, you've sent 62 emails to all sorts of parties, to all sorts of stakeholders. And it can be tempting to think that I've sent out all of this stuff. So I've done this change work. And yeah, email is important in our day of work. I'm not saying it's not. I'm not saying you can't send out emails. But don't mistake extensive emails for doing work of change. Because a lot of times, sending off that email, replying to an email, scratches that dopamine itch. We're getting stuff done. I'm grooving here. I'm knocking stuff out, sending out this email. But what's the main thing? What's the vision? What's the roadmap? Is it the 62 emails that I sent out today? Or is it the vision? Is it the focus? Is it the work that needs to get done to bring about the change? We're not going to get change done, right, by sitting in our office and just sending out email after email after email. Sometimes we have to send out emails. I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm just saying don't rely on that as a crutch. This reminds me of a great quote by Teddy Roosevelt in 1910. It's a little longer, so bear with me. I love this quote. Not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs and comes up short again and again because there is no effort without error or shortcoming, but who knows the great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who, at the worst, if he fails, at least he fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who knew neither victory nor defeat. I think that's relevant to the email because it's easy to follow bureaucratic steps. It really is. It's hard to do it in one sense, but it's easy in another because you're out of the arena. You're on the sideline, right? Yeah, you got to send emails. Yeah, you got to reply. Yeah, you got to interact with that. But sometimes we do that to stay out of the arena. The credit belongs to the man who's actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust, sweat, and blood. If you're in schools, there's going to be those sweaty moments. Hopefully not the blood, maybe some dirt, maybe some dust. Don't be tempted to just be in the sidelines, in the office. Get out there, interacting, encouraging, face to face. Because remember, bureaucracy might seem like it allows you to get things done. But what it's actually doing is killing the work of change. Change is like this fire that's growing and building momentum, and bureaucracy will come like that wool blanket and extinguish it. We don't want that. Be free of that. Simplify. So point is you want to minimize as much as possible. So if we're in K-12 schools, okay, what are bureaucratic things that are helpful for the school safety and the vision that we want to bring about? And what are bureaucratic steps that I'm really putting into place or have been put in place to control others? And those are the ones we want to get rid of piece by piece, taking them away. As we take those pieces away, we're going to build agency. We're going to build ownership. And we're going to help the momentum to move forward. All right, so let's spend a couple minutes talking about, thinking about, reflecting on how are we going to apply this? All right, so first, I've mentioned this a couple times, so I'll be quick with this one. Be on the lookout for these bureaucratic procedures that are seeking to control, or these bureaucratic procedures that you have a lot of hope in, because there's no perfect bureaucratic process that's going to produce change. So be on the lookout and get rid of those pieces. And in place of those pieces, stick to your vision and have the difficult conversations as you're in the arena. Lead, guide, direct, build ownership, agency, and keep the progress moving. But first, as we're applying, think to yourself, all right, where in my organization, where in my school could we get rid of bureaucracy? Where are we tempted to lean on that? Where am I tempted to use bureaucracy to control others? Think about those things. And I think you're going to find a couple areas, and then you do those and keep going. Keep going. The second point, as I'm reflecting, I think we could take away a lot from MVPs, minimum viable products. I think we could learn a lot about that in our change initiative. Sometimes we want things to be too perfect. And I said that in one of the points earlier, like some of us are hesitant to get a change protocol. I think it was in the response to that question. Some of us are hesitant to lean on a change protocol because we want the perfect change protocol. We have to stop that because that's keeping us from moving towards effective change. So minimum viable product. Let me give you an example. DoorDash. DoorDash was started basically like this. People were wondering, all right, will people actually order food from an app? I don't know. I'm not going to build a whole nother company. So here's what I'm going to do to find out. They basically created QR codes and they put those up, and people that ordered scanned the QR code, they ordered. Some of the owners, the beginning founders of DoorDash, early leadership group, what they did was then they would go pick up the food and then they would deliver it and see if people actually wanted it. See if it was a need. It hit. And as they had this minimal viable product, it was simply a QR code at some of the more popular restaurants in that area. As they saw an interest and as they delivered, then they built it. But they started with something really simple, a QR code, and then they would just deliver, or they would have the beginning leadership team deliver. And as it grew, they grew. As it grew, it got more complex. As it grew, it developed into what it is today. Very successful business. They didn't develop and build DoorDash. They developed a minimal viable product to make sure it was a need and it worked, and then they built it. So we can learn about that with change. Instead of building all of these bureaucratic steps, start with a minimal viable product. See if it works towards that change, and then develop it. Okay, so think about that. What's a change you want to bring about in your school? What's the simplest way that you could try to see if that's a need, to see if you're onto something without the complexity? The most simple. Then you see if it works, see if the change is moving, and if it fits a need, and then you can develop. And that will help fight against bureaucracy because you're keeping it simple. You're keeping it to its essence. You're keeping it to fill a need, to satisfy a need. And as it does, then you build it, you grow, you continue to develop while also not bringing on bureaucracy. All right, so let's end with that thought as we consider eliminating bureaucracy when bringing about change. Thank you so much for tuning in to Diving Deep EDU. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Questions, send an email, look in the show notes, subscribe, share, and leave a review. Until next time.
Wow, it's time to reflect. That's astounding. You've been checking out the podcast from Matthew Downing. Hope you like diving deep like a scuba diver. And the show provoked hope, that's our true desire.